SOC2 and ISO 27001 are amongst the most popular compliance frameworks in the world. Clients that want to gauge your security practices will often ask you for one, either, or even both. But which of these frameworks do you really need? Are the differences that stark? And is one tangibly better than the other? We tackle all these questions and more in this handy video. Let's start with similarities, and here's the main one. Both SOC2 and ISO 27001 help you build and communicate your robust security posture to the external world. They're both also voluntary endeavors. There's no legal binding that says you have to be compliant, unlike with GDPR or HIPAA. Both encourage and enforce continuous compliance and monitoring. It's a lifestyle, not just a diet. And finally, when you really boil down to it, they're also more similar than you think. SOC2 and ISO 27001 have an 80% overlap of security requirements. So what are the differences? Well, let's start from the top. SOC2 and ISO 27001 are run by different organizations, work for different geographies, and take different amounts of time to complete. While SOC2 is run by the AICPA, ISO 27001 is implemented by its namesake, the International Organization for Standardization. And as these organizations' names would suggest, SOC2 is most commonly asked for in North America, while ISO 27001 is a more globally accepted standard. ISO 27001 is also considered a broader framework and is therefore slightly more difficult and takes slightly longer to achieve, often between 6 to 24 months. However, ISO only has to be renewed once every 3 years and results in an actual certification. SOC2 is considered a more accessible standard, partly because it's narrow in scope and partly because it only takes 6 to 12 months to achieve. Furthermore, unlike ISO, SOC2 has two types of attestations, a Type 1 and a Type 2. This gives companies more freedom when choosing to get compliant. However, SOC2 has to be renewed every year. There are more subtle differences between SOC2 and ISO. If you'd really like to get into the details, we have a blog about it that you can read from the description below. So which should you get? SOC2 or ISO 27001? The number one determinant of which framework you should go for revolves around a single question. Which framework are your customers asking for? Beyond that, here's 3 factors you can also consider. Where are your customers, both current and future, based out of? If your customers or your target market is North America, then SOC2 is right for you. However, if you're looking to expand globally, for instance, ISO probably gets you further. How much time do you have to get compliant? As we mentioned earlier, SOC2 allows you to get compliant in as little as 6 to 12 months. So if you're on a tight schedule, that's probably your best option. And 3, do you already have an ISMS? Regardless of which framework you choose, you can expect certain things. Lots of paperwork, a significant amount of leadership and engineering bandwidth that'll probably distract you from sales and product, and a long audit that'll involve a ton of back and forth with an auditor. To save you from these things, we built Sprinto. Sprinto automates over 15 plus compliances, SOC2 and ISO included. So there's no more pesky paper or admin work. Companies that work with Sprinto get compliant in as little as 4 to 6 weeks. And with a zero-touch audit, you never really have to talk to an auditor. This means that you can spend your time doing what you're supposed to, building products and closing sales.